and thank you so much for agreeing to do this interaction with me on women in architecture. This is a research which I am conducting to understand life of women in the profession of built environment, because many women have deviated from the field of the conventional architecture, which is building architecture. And that's where I got very interested to work on this research. And the focus of the research is basically, as I mentioned, life, but importantly, the journey of a woman from when she entered the architecture and where she stands today in the profession, how diverse and multidisciplinary she's been working on. And the method is called autoethnography, which means it's your biography and my pen. And I'm hoping to make a little coffee table booklet. And the idea is that everyone should come to know that these are the women architects in the country. And if they're interested, they can always reach out to these women, and then they can get the understanding of what architecture they do, what is their philosophy of life, and all those things. But my focus is only on the womanhood of it. This woman in the profession, how is she managing the profession, life, and all other things. So once again, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. This conversation is going to be recorded and also later on put in the public domain. So I also need your formal consent on that. So thank you so much. Over to you, Ritu.
Thank you, Mansee, for inviting me for this. I think it's a very pertinent cause to understand how women professionals think. And I wish you all the best for this great endeavor that you want to take.
Thank you so much. So let me start with a very interesting question, and I will see already a smile in your face. Just go back to the years of high school and what was going on in your head, in your family, that you should join architecture or you should do something else. What was it? Can you just share with us?
Well, I was born to very ambitious parents, and my mother in particular was very ambitious. And in her times, she was not able to, of course, pursue a career too much because it was considered secondary for women to, they should first focus on a house and the family. So my father was an engineer and he was posted at various places in the country and outside. So I had very ambitious parents and I was supposed to top in the class all the time. And thankfully I was topping. But I think architecture was not too much there because even then we were not too much aware. We lived in North India most of the time and there was not too much of awareness in architecture. But the fact earlier, probably my parents thought I would be a doctor, later probably an engineer. And I gave my entrance exams for engineering. But I think 10th and 11th, I must say I scored very well. I topped the UP state merit also. So there were high plans, relatives telling me I should go into the bureaucracy.
Toppers usually like engineering and
yeah. So we were a typical family of achievers, and I had an elder brother who was an achiever. So architecture was nowhere there, but yes, ambition was there and career was definitely very important, even then.
But then how did you land up in architecture then?
Well, those times, architecture just had one aptitude test extra in engineering. Yes. I was not very good in sketching, if I may say so, because people do talk about, sketches and things like that. So I was not really good in sketching, but I think I was creative and I managed to clear the test. And I was pretty happy about architecture. But my mom thought the more important thing was that Lucknow was a place, where we could stay, So she thought the city was also conducive. And that is how the decisions were made. So architecture was not the first choice, probably even then, but I made the best of it. So I think I just
So were you getting engineering in some other city and that's why Lucknow mein you got architecture and that's why it was decided?
I was getting engineering in some very small town somewhere. We didn't have private colleges then. This was 91. And my mom said, "Are kahan jaoge?" and all that, typical moms, despite all those career ambition ideas. And she said, "Are kahan jaoge? Lucknow is good," and all that. And I took admission. I was pretty happy about it.
So my question following to this, because it is very interesting, how do we make choices, early career choices, because the whole life changes accordingly, just to understand, because you stayed there and I'm sure you stayed home and then you were doing architecture and all, and you already mentioned you have an elder brother. But when you were doing architecture, even in those age, I mean, we are very contemporary. I also started in 89. Uh, I do remember that there was not much talking about, being girl in architecture, or in fact, we were more privileged being a girl in architecture and, pampered to large extent also. But
Yeah.
teachers never made this distinction that you are a girl or you are a boy while we were studying. So did you also realize there was no that I can do everything also as an ambitious child, and at the same time were you really realizing at some point in time towards the end of the graduation that what am I going to do, or is being woman is going to hamper my career path, or I have to make some decisions? Was it going in your head that time?
Well, Mansi, this is a very interesting question. Somehow our batch had more girls than boys.
Yes, I can
So,
imagine that.
so before that, the batches that we had were
Same here
predominantly
in
boys.
Bhopal. Same here in Bhopal in my time.
Out of 32, we were around 19 girls,
Hmm.
and all good and brilliant achievers, ambitious girls. But I do remember some of my teachers, which have played an important role in molding me, telling us that it is difficult for boys and girls को तो कुछ नहीं करना, उनको तो शादी करनी है. And I remember all of us getting enraged at this. And I think by third year, there was a very serious psychological thought process going on that we have to make a mark and we have to show this guy that we can be better than boys. So I think I again was a topper all through, and I think the boys really liked the way we behaved. Some of us they didn't because they were rigid and they were not ready to postpone submissions and things like that. But I was pretty flexible, so we had great rapport with the boys also. And towards the end, I think final year, all through we never felt we were lesser at all, except for those one or two teachers telling us that men should be ready to take up this hard job, whereas women can sit back and relax. So, and I'm proud to say, after 25 years of passing out, today is the 20, I mean, this year is the 25th Silver Jubilee. Almost all the girls of my class are somewhere really, really good. They have achieved great success in their careers, in their families, in their lives. So I think we were more inclined towards proving ourselves, than thinking, that we should be privileged and we should be lesser and we should take a back seat and we should be comfortable. I don't think so. We all wanted to do something really great in life.
That's interesting because we are from the similar time zone, and we see the difference now that this kind of discussion doesn't even occur in the college.
Doesn't even occur.
When we are talking about 25, 30 years ago. So just to understand, because you also attained your doctoral. So did you stay in Lucknow all over? I mean, all through your studies, or did you really try to explore somewhere else? Because to large extent when we are studying architecture, we also get spoiled, because until 12th we are very hardcore studying, and suddenly in architecture we don't have to study much, so we it's like wings coming out of the
Totally,
birds.
totally.
So just trying to understand, how did you pursue your education after that, because you did continue and complete your doctoral.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. In fact, it's interesting again the way you mentioned. Uh, Architecture changed us thoroughly. I became much more extroverted and social after doing architecture.
Yes.
And I met my future husband there, and we got married. Like, I mean, it was a whirlwind. Somehow destiny had it, and I think the year I passed out, we got married, and we started a practice, and we were very, very happy. Those were good times for architectural
So
practice.
is he
And
also
for
architect?
yeah, he's an architect.
Okay.
He's an architect. He's an architect. In fact, his father was also an architect. He was practicing in Lucknow for the last 40 years. So
Okay.
we had an architectural household. And now, because my parents, being ambitious, they kept on telling me that I should apply for these government jobs, which I kept doing. And I got selected. Now, that was kind of disastrous because I always wanted to practice. And my teachers always told me that I was a designer. So then again, family comes in and they say it's always good to have one person working in the office and the other probably having a practice, because that gives stability to your life. I just agreed, I think I agreed. And I joined the Government College of Architecture as a faculty. And I remember the first 2 years were miserable. I didn't enjoy myself. I thought misplaced, and I thought I was not cut out for academics. And I used to, go to the office. The first opportunity I got, I ran to the office to do my work because that was extremely important for me. But I think after 2 to 3 years, I started enjoying myself. The students started respecting me for what I was giving them. And then over the years, I wanted to do masters, and then because I was just a graduate, a masters, and then later a PhD. Now here is the interesting part that you might like more. I applied twice for a master's program, and this is the QIP, the Quality Improvement Program, in which you can be sponsored to an institute.
Yeah.
And believe me, I got in twice. Once I got selected to IIT Roorkee, the second time to SPA Delhi, and coveted programs. But by then I had a small baby, and my mom said, "Don't worry, you go, we'll take care of it." But I just didn't go. Somehow that guilt of leaving the child was too much for
Yes.
me, and I didn't go. And then there was this opportunity of doing a PhD from CEPT University, and they did not require residency. And I said I should take this up because this is the only opportunity I may really get. And I took that up. And of course, it took a lot of time. And finally, I did complete my master's also. But yes, being a woman and the natural guilt of being a young mother was extremely instrumental in shaping the career the way it was. So
I think, and also being in education, it also helped you to really take the path of doctoral, because
absolutely.
Personally, I mean, you will also agree with me that doing a PhD is the best and most liberating feeling as a person. I mean,
Yeah,
everything just opens up.
totally,
So,
totally.
so that's good to know, because you were talking about this being in guilt as a mother, and which is very common in most of the women who go through this process of motherhood and all. Even till date, that responsibility will be with you. I mean, even if the children grow or the child grows, I just would like to know now, how do you do your family and your professional balance? I mean, because the more we are growing older, we have more responsibilities also.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So how do you see yourself in managing? I mean, have you become much better manager, or you are? I mean, I'm sure, but then we would like to know some tricks of being good manager of life and profession.
I think, there could be so many books. Every person would have their own story, which could be put into a book of
That's
how they
what
kind of
I'm trying to tap.
yeah, traversed their career and life. I think I was more guilty with my elder child because I was a first time mother and I didn't know how to handle things. So I would rush home and, I would spend that extra time playing with him or drawing with him and taking him out and things like that. With my second child, I was more relaxed. By the time he happened, I think I had already joined my PhD, so I had lesser time also. But there was tremendous guilt, especially in the younger years. But I would say, I was lucky. My children did not turn out, they didn't go into bad practices. They didn't, I think generally the uh, ghar ka mahal also helps, you
Of
don't get
course.
into malpractices. But I was scared, as to, and to an extent where I also started thinking that my career ambition might actually make them lack in certain things,
Yes.
because, and
That's
I
the
was
guilt
living,
factor women
that's
carry.
the guilt factor. And my in-laws and my parents would keep telling me that I should be prioritizing my children. My career is already done. Why should I be pushing it so much? And thankfully, my sons do really well. My elder son is now placed with Amazon, and my younger son is in 11th, and he's also doing extremely well all over, I mean, in studies and extracurricular. So my guilt is not that much because they've performed well. But suppose they didn't, it's
Yes.
entirely possible because the child has his own journey. Then probably it might have been a bit of a setback for all of us. So that remains, I think, for a woman that
That
remains.
risk, that risk,
That
and
risk.
also taking the onus that I have to do it. That is also very much self-taken. Nobody is saying it's your
Nobody's saying it.
responsibility. We just take it.
We just take it.
That's I think a very critical point in every woman's life, particularly when the child comes into the life. Of course, there's one change when you get married to a person of the same profession or not same profession, which is also part of my research in how that shapes a person as a person, as a woman. Just to understand, two major happenings in life after you join architecture, of course, marriage and the child themselves. uh, there must be some other moments in life which may have helped you take some decisions, professional, personal, anything, emotional. So we would like to know, if you don't mind to share, some things which may have shaped your career of what you are today as a person, or as a very successful woman for that matter. Some
Well,
decisions which you take, which you took in the past or
well, thank you.
circumstances.
Thank you for calling me successful, Mansi. I was so self-critical of myself that I would not dare call myself successful, because I always lived with the limitation of having to stay in the same city forever. For a long period of time, I kept on thinking that I am too good to stay in this city and I should be at a better place. My parents, my father in special was ill and my brother was abroad. So I had to stay for them. And plus, of course, my husband had his practice. So there was no point of uprooting everybody and moving. And I think if I would have gone ahead and moved to a city, they wouldn't have minded it so much. But I put this self-inflicted blame on myself, that I'm supposed to be there for everybody. And for a long period of time, I kept on grudging myself for the fact that I could not move. And it's only now, probably for the last 2 or 3 years, when I've started realizing that probably staying in the same place was instead a blessing than a curse.
Absolutely.
But but a lot of my friends moved abroad. They went to the US. They went all over. And sometimes my mom would turn back and say, "Look, I mean, you're still here. Where have your friends gone? They're doing
No,
such
but
good
that
things."
started right at the beginning when you had to join architecture.
No, no,
You were
no, no,
held
later.
back in Lucknow because it was in the same
Yeah,
city.
but
So,
that's how the
that's what
parents,
we are talking, how things change, everything
they
changes.
totally. And I think I used to argue with my mom lately. She passed away this year, so I, of
I'm
course,
sorry.
yeah, but I used to argue with her on the same fact that you are the one who took these decisions. So, and I'm here for you. So, care. But I think there happens a time when you are kind of finding yourself, especially before you're 40, when you start thinking that I
Yes,
can do this and that, and I can achieve this and that. And then you kind of, think that probably if I was in New York, I would be doing better. Or if I was in Chennai, probably my practice would be much better and I would be better known. But I also think that destiny has a large role to play here. Plus, of course, whatever you've been working at for the last so many years has to bear fruit somewhere. So right now, I can say that I'm pretty content, because not just an academician, I'm into practice. I am doing consultancy, which is institutional consultancy also. I am doing a lot of research. We are doing research projects. We are publishing. We are writing books. So I'm in a pretty happy space. Plus, I think online has become one of the biggest boons for people like us who think that staying in small cities is a problem. We should be moving to larger cities. So I think my reach has increased tremendously, and I'm thankful for that. But yes, I've cursed myself and a lot of people all my life for a lot of things that were not happening. So I think I'm pretty normal that way.
no, I think it's two-way things. You ask people like me who have not returned to their own city, and the loss we feel. We are
Absolutely,
lost.
absolutely.
We don't have a route. So living. So it's like give and take. It's a trade-off which we have to and decide. And unfortunately, at a very tender age, we make these decisions, and then we live with it. So I mean, even if you ask me today, one thing if I would like to change is actually return to my main
Wow,
city where I was brought up,
wow,
just to share. Because I mean, when I'm doing this conversation, I'm also trying to, we learn from each other and reflect on each other, and that
absolutely.
that is what is motivating for each other. So I think I see you that wow, you stayed back and grew, and it's like a tree. Banyan tree cannot be replaced,
It cannot be.
relocated here and there, and you're taking care of your parents, your children, your family, plus you are able to fulfill your professional requirements. So
Yeah, yeah,
definitely
yeah.
there are major decisions which are taken there. Just to understand, because you have such a long career and doing so much diverse activities, I'm sure you must be also looking up to some ideals in life. I mean, um, I will not limit it to architecture because we are not talking architecture per se. And maybe you would like to share who inspires you, or I mean, anyone.
Yeah, I think now my mom inspires me for the last 5 years because I've realized she's been very, very strong. And, I have always been emotional. So I would like to be strong like her so that I don't become extremely sentimental at times. At other times, I think I've met a lot of people who are professionals, and I've also met homemakers. Sometimes I really envy the homemakers because they're happy. They're just blissfully happy. I
I
mean,
feel they are princess. I feel they are princess and queen in the
and
house.
and they don't mind it at all. I mean, if I was kept in the house for about 5 days, 6 days without me wanting to stay back, I would just break down. I don't think I can stay at home. I've never really stayed at home all my life, except for the COVID period. And then too, I was working. So I think sometimes I think we should also learn to understand the meaning of balance. So now of late, I've started revering women who are balanced because being only career dominated or only family dominated is not happening. So maybe a bit of everything, that becomes important. And then uh, of course my priorities have changed, all over the life. So earlier I would really look up to career oriented women and the pay packages they drew and their status in the society and
See?
things like that. But now I think just happy,
Who
being
is
happy at the
happy? Who is happy?
is happy. So at the end of the day, you go home, you have kids, you have a good house, and you've got good people, friends around you, then you're happy. So I think now I've
Absolutely.
really, really started looking at people who are happy, and I've started I'm also trying to look at them as to how to be happy. So probably I've started doing yoga, I've started doing other activities which nurture the soul more than just the mind. So that is
Absolutely.
something that has changed.
Well, see, I mean, with age, we also change, and also we learn a lot of things. And, accommodation is also something which is very common in women, So that also is, which comes better with the age. So just to understand, how do you imbibe these values of life into your design and business approaches? I mean, how do you see that what you are as a human being influences the way you are designing projects? So maybe now you can briefly tell us what kind of work you do, how many years you have been working, and what kind of research interests you have.
Well, my professional career after college has started from 97. So it's exactly been 25 years since I've been working. And I've been lucky to delve into practice, hardcore practice, commercial practice, institutional practice, research, academics, and of course, being a family member and the other things. I think being human is one of the most important things we should definitely have if we are trying to look at a balanced life. Understanding what people want is more important than what we want people to do. Because, in architectural practice, and that is a problem with our education system also, where we say that a designer has a right to decide how people will live. Now, that is something where we started off with when I just started practicing. But over the years, I realized that if I'm able to exactly pinpoint what a person wants in the project that I'm designing, I've made it. It doesn't matter if I win the Pritzker or I get an award for it or not. But if I've been able to nurture the soul of people, I've done the job. Similarly, in academics, I would also say there are a lot of people teachers who would give a lot of jargon in terms of fancy names, fancy places, and fancy connections. I think it should be simple. The simpler you are, the better you are understood. And I hope my students would vouch for it, that I've been able to maintain a connect with the students and being able to pass the information that I'm trying to share. In research also, and that is again, I think it's the gist of my life. Being simple is very difficult, very, very difficult. It's easy to hide behind this facade of great words and great knowledgeable people. If I can make people feel good about the work I do, about the teachings that I do, about the research I make, then I've done a difference to the society, to the people, to the planet, to the country.
Absolutely. You actually almost touched the feministic side of talking about being woman. This well-being quotient is very, very important, and the way you describe, like most of the architecture profession, even through education, we try to say that we know better than what is required for you. Vis-a-vis, what would you like to have? I will try to provide it to you. I mean, it's a very different approach, these both of them. So any memorable project which you would like to share with us, and how many years you have been doing working now? I mean, both teaching, practice, and
Well, again, 25 years overlapping all the activities that I have done, including practice and everything. I remember one of my initial projects, we were doing this house, and it was a small plot, and we had to make some 2 3 floors of that. And that guy was a Sindhi guy, a businessman, but he was a very sweet chap. It was one of our initial projects, and he was not very cultured and sophisticated in terms of his expression. But when his house was getting made, he would say, अरे आपको पता नहीं है, आपका घर इतना अच्छा बना है कि लोग यहाँ से स्कूटर से सामने से जाते हैं और आगे जाके एक्सीडेंट हो जाता है उनका, because they cannot stop looking at your house. So that was his sweet way of communicating that he liked whatever we were doing. That guy was one. Another guy, we did a house. It was a slightly formalistic, I would say, approach. He patiently got it done, got everything made, and I'm so proud to say that he maintains everything the way it was made. So somehow we were able to touch that chord with him. We were able to kind of communicate and understand what he wanted, and we were able to give him the same. So that has been really, really memorable. Some of the projects still stay very close to your heart. In terms of institutional projects, there is one which we did as an extension. This was an existing building, and we did try to complete it by completing the square of that building. So it was a very contextual project, and it was for the government department. But of course, the government department doesn't, especially the UP government officials, most of them, sorry, I'm not saying anything,
no.
but they don't understand the creativity, so they want a typical glass facade or a typical stone facade and things like that. So, but I think there's people who still pass that building, send me photographs of that space that we've created. So I think it's important to be understood by the people than by the people who are giving awards. Again, I think while I was teaching, I have had the fortune of meeting students who write back even 10 years of passing out, and they just write notes saying that you were one person who made a difference to my life. And I think it still gives me goosebumps to think, and it's a huge responsibility. If I was instrumental by changing even one person's attitude to the profession or life.
Absolutely.
And there have been women students, girl students, who said, we don't know how you've been able to manage all these things together, and we think you're a role model, because we want to balance all of this. So it's not just the career, it's not just the house, it's not just the profession. We want to be somewhere, in between. So I think I've got a lot of love, and I'm happy and thankful for that. Maybe I don't deserve it all. I have just been lucky.
No, I'm sure you deserve it. That's why you are getting it. So let me just ask you some more questions towards that. Because you also work on practice and you're going on field and all, maybe you recollect some of the challenges even women face today, but in the past when we started practicing and all, there were much more challenges being women in the profession. I mean, can you share some of those challenges and how that has changed over the years? I mean, of course, for you it has changed, but in general in the in society.
Well, that's such a pertinent question, because when we started practice, people would not, we were a husband and wife team. So I think people would still listen to me because I was communicating mostly through my husband. Now, there was this doctor who was getting a clinic made. He was a very well-read guy, very established. His daughter was a doctor, and his family was, very educated. And we would go together for meetings, my husband and me, to his clinic for the design. And every time I would say something, let's do this, because I was handling that project. Every time I would say something, he would look to my husband and say, "ठीक बोल रही हैं ये."
Take
And it was,
take a confirmation.
yeah, taking a confirmation key, can we go ahead with this? And I remember my husband, poor guy, he used to tell him कि sir आपका सारा काम यही कर रही है, she is totally capable, she is better than me also in a few fronts,
Oh my
so
God.
you should not discourage her, please listen to her. But khair, discreetly he would keep on doing the same thing. Another client, I remember, we were doing this showroom and this guy was from Banaras, it was a jewelry showroom. So this guy had to come and meet Vishal, and my husband says, I'm not in town, please, my wife will be there in the office, you come and meet her, she'll give you the designs. So this guy said, नहीं नहीं भैया आप होते and all that. So he insisted, Vishal insisted, कि I will not come for a week. Why don't you go and take the designs? You will not believe it. Those guys never came
Wow.
because they couldn't imagine taking orders or taking drawings from a woman. So it was bad. It was bad, I must say. And education and coming into academics gave me that equality and parity. Things
Absolutely.
have
It's much
changed
better in academics, huh? In terms
because
of
you're
gender.
valued for your own work. Things have changed. I have a lot of students who are practicing solo also nowadays. They don't have husbands to validate their opinions, but we still have a long way to go. I mean, even in meetings, and we go to meetings as senior people now, sometimes institutional representatives also, the contractors, the general managers, the project managers will still not take you as seriously as a man, even if the man was younger or lesser lesser in
Knowing.
physique, no personality, they would still listen to him. Maybe it's the North India mindset more than the South India mindset. But yes, it's changing, but it will still take a lot of time. I must say, it will still take a lot of time for women to be taken seriously on their own. It's still a long
Both
way
in
to go.
office and on site. I mean, site is worse, but in office also. I mean, I can also relate with when you were saying when the client is taking a consent or a confirmation, because I also have a spouse who is architect, by the way, and he has contributed a lot to my exit from architecture also, for all these experiences which I was having from the society, not him directly, but through him, the experience of the society really helped
Was
me take
coming
a
in.
lot of decisions. And I can completely relate when you say these things. I mean, I was most of the time standing at the back with all men stand discussing a drawing which I prepared, design which I
Totally,
prepared, and I'm not
totally,
part of the discussion at all.
totally, totally,
From general
totally.
manager to site engineer, everybody is discussing a design which I prepared, and I'm just sitting on the side and sipping my chai. So this is
Absolutely,
very common
absolutely.
for women to face. So this is something which is coming out very clear when we have spouse of the same profession. So, I mean, because I am also interviewing or interacting with women who are in a different situation, so we get a different feel there. But just to
Mm.
understand that this is a challenge which we face, but at the same time, especially because we are ambitious women and all, we have also realized that there are moments when we know that being woman is an opportunity in the situation. You know, so I would like to just understand from you. Have you had those situations where you have capitalized a situation of being woman and you really got the work done? Just if you would like to share that.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. I think there are times when I've thought that I wanted to be a man because I wanted to take the front seat. But there are times that I have really enjoyed myself being a woman, batting my eyelids and wearing good clothes and getting away with it. Yes. And I will not deny that because we are that way slightly more privileged, because
Yes.
we can get a lot of work done. I mean, being good to people. So I think that way is yes. But the sad part is, like you said, if the spouse is the architect, there are still so many friends who are handling the entire office, the entire site, and everything. But when a project gets awarded on stage, the husband goes, the wife does not even
That
accompany.
was still like this until recently, even Pritzker. I mean, recently they have changed it.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Because only one person is supposed to go on the stage, the husband goes. And
Even
in
till
fact,
date, many private awards are given to the husband. I mean, I remember recently I actually hammered my friend in Jabalpur, who is standing on the stage and getting the award where the office is really managed. But this is where we started the conversation also today, that many successful male architects in the past and even today are running their offices with the fact that the woman is sitting in the office all day long and managing the design and the human resources in the offices,
Totally, totally,
you
totally,
know.
totally.
But when it
Absolutely.
comes to being the face of the office, when it comes to be getting the paycheck of the project, it's completely
It's them.
changes.
It's
Yeah,
them.
it's
Absolutely,
completely changes,
absolutely.
you know.
And it's
But
still
then
happening. It's still happening, and I don't see it changing very soon. I don't see it changing.
me too. I don't see it changing either. So we have very similar understanding, but because we are also from the same time generation, you know, same time zone and all. Uh, um, we have gone through it for a long time, and we have reached a situation where, I mean, you can relate with it also, that we give a damn to all these things now.
Absolutely.
Because we can just live the way we would like to, and take things head on. I mean, we will not
Absolutely.
take anything and everything from anybody and everybody now. I mean, it's the
Absolutely.
stage of life where we have reached. But you have already mentioned the kind of responses people give around, I mean, would you like to really share something in the academic environment, how gender is being seen? I mean, there is a huge difference, definitely, but still, when I was starting this research, I tried to look into the statistics of it, how many HODs, how many vice chancellors in the universities, and still the situation looks very bleak. I mean, how many
Absolutely.
professors and all. What is your take on that?
Well, you've hit the nail on the head, actually. Uh, in architecture, it's still less. I think we are more, because we've studied in environments, we are more receptive to women bosses and women colleagues and women juniors. But I think the engineering departments need a major overhaul,
Yes,
especially for people. Just if, for example, we are also associated with an engineering department and an engineering university. Now, there the women working are very far and few between. So I think they're relegated to these back tasks of managing the cultural affairs and things like that. So probably, somebody standing up for a vice chancellor chair might not be considered very viable if she was a woman, especially with North India and UP government, if I may
we
say.
we
So they
don't
still
have
have a,
1% vice chancellor in the country. Forget about architecture. All discipline. Not even 1% vice
oh God,
chancellor.
oh God, that's like really,
We
really
are
bad. Huh?
far, far there.
Yeah,
But you see, even in politics, we have one chief minister. We
absolutely.
have 10% only women in the parliaments, both upper
And
house and lower house.
for the ones who've
So
been
that
there,
way,
for example,
architecture,
if
we are better. We are better in
I
architecture.
agree, I agree, I agree. Better in architecture. But the problem is that if a woman reaches to the top, even in architecture, she's considered ruthless and brash and very ambitious and cutthroat, while a man will not be called the same. So if you look at some of the women practices also, where the women has had the charge of the office, or even if she's become a vice chancellor, or she's become a dean, or she's become a principal, most of them are not given credit for the what they've achieved. It's
Absolutely.
either through the sly methods of what we say, I don't
Or
know, I
even
mean,
nepotism is used sometimes,
nepotism, yes,
for
nepotism, or
example.
just being a puppet, VC to whatever. So I think that ways there is a lot to be achieved, a lot to be achieved.
There are a lot of studies which also tells that for women to reach the same position is a longer path, longer steps than
Absolutely,
a man to reach the same position, because
absolutely,
you
absolutely,
also mentioned it very well through your client who is seeking confirmation. So even if woman is reaching there, every time she has to go through that test, that whether it is she's right or not. So you will
absolutely,
always require a proxy boss in that case. But at the
absolutely,
same time, we have also seen many women understanding this challenge, and they have become successful. My personal concern is many times many women have actually turned more masculine than their femininity has lost, because the urge for being successful has been very strong. So, I mean, I'm sure you can also relate with that. There are moments when I have gone into women meetings, and I really feel that where are the women? Where is the womanhood? I mean, if it is more. So somewhere the definition of successful itself is masculine, and
absolutely,
if we start
absolutely,
aping it, then we tend to become like that. I mean, that there is a risk. So keeping that womanhood or the femininity is very important, and at the same time enjoying, as you rightly mentioned, well-being or happiness is at the core of everything, and rest can be really taken care of. Just I'm coming closer to my conversation with you, and it has been wonderful, and I'm sure you are also enjoying the conversation here. uh, a hypothetical situation for you. Okay. Now
Yeah.
it's a more professional question, but imagine now in a city like Lucknow or in Ahmedabad, where I am, there were more women architects, or let's say in the country also. We just turned the gender around, and there were more women architects or designers or planners who were practicing, teaching, who were in the better positions and all. Do you think our cities would have looked different?
Absolutely.
How?
Absolutely.
Give us some
Uh,
components, some examples.
well, I'm not taking away this from men, but women generally will be more compassionate, more humanized, and they would look at people's problems more than their own inflated egos. They are not trying to cut out people from their lives. I think they are more inclusive. So our cities need to look at all these concerns where we are looking at children, where we are looking at disability, where we are looking at old people, we are looking at everybody. So we need to design for everybody. It's not about some ego male trip, where they've been to Paris and they want to make the city look like Paris. So that's one thing I think that would change. Second, I think there will be less corruption. I think.
You just nailed both of them.
And third, I think there will be, sorry, I just forgot. It was in my mind. There was another thing that I was talking about. Yeah,
Would
and
you
there will be
bring
no politics. And there will be no politics.
would you
Because
bring sustainability or ecology also into it?
absolutely, because we believe that resources are to be shared, and it's a part of our upbringing, and it's a part of the way we live in, that we are told to manage a lot of resources. And that's why I think these things naturally come to us. We do not have to think of them. Another thing that I think, because I've worked in a lot of environments, men love to gossip and talk a lot about their
Whereas women
working
are said
environments.
to gossiping, be gossiping.
I don't say we don't gossip. We gossip, but it's about more frivolous things. We don't gossip about more serious things in life because they are sacrosanct. We don't gossip about them. But that is why working environments are always better if they have more women, because they would normally have so many things to do that they would like to finish their task
They
and
will
go
not
home.
waste time.
They will not waste time. And we faced these situations in our college, in our departments, at a lot of times where there have been more women, and we were absolutely happy. There was no groupism, there were no politics, there were no issues. We were all working towards similar goals. So I think if women were at the helm, a lot of things would change. A lot of things would change. Now, of course, you can't generalize because people are different,
Of course
but
not.
en masse, I think we would be more disciplined and more organized in general, I think.
Very well put. Very well put, to be honest. Just to understand, because I have my last question now here, and I have been really enjoying talking to you because we are also meeting for the first time,
Yeah, yeah,
and it
yeah.
doesn't feel that we met for the first time. But I'm just curious what kind of research you are doing these days, because I would like to draw some parallels if there is some possibility of collaboration or something in future. And what are the subjects you love to teach?
Well, I think design has always been my forte. Architecture design is something that I love because and I've always promoted the lateral thinking approach, where I say that the solution may not lie directly to the problem, but in a different manner. So I've promoted that in my design studios. The type of research that I've been doing has also been actually a great factor which has changed my personality. I have worked on traditional and vernacular architecture, and
Okay.
I've looked at the simplistic solutions that it offers to respond to our environment, to the sustainability, to the longevity of our buildings. And it was built by not architects, but commonsensical people. So
Absolutely.
these type of decisions that have come from what we call uneducated people or illiterate people have been very rewarding. Of late, we've also been working on heat stress mapping. We are doing this research project in Ayodhya where we are partnering with the Belgium government. And we are talking about mapping the city for heat stress, and we will project it for 50 years and 100 years. And urban heat island, which is a reality now, and then probably propose some changes to the government as to how it can be mitigated. We are also working on construction waste, where we are saying that this demolition that comes from the buildings needs to be taken care of. And
Absolutely. It's a big
so
problem.
so we are trying to make bricks and blocks out of that, which can be used for low cost construction methodologies. And generally, I think it's all about looking around us, looking at sustainable aspects, energy efficient aspects, and some things that can be easily taken forward. It's whatever has been, there's a lot of marketing and there's a lot of I would say hyperactivity happening around a lot of things which are just branded and put across us, in terms of advertisements. I think India is a country which has always been resource friendly because we never had enough resources. So if we learn from our basic common sense and the methods that we've used, we will all prosper and live happily ever after. I don't think we need to look
Absolutely.
at a lot of gimmicky work that we are doing.
Yeah. But do you think that somehow many women or most women, we can say that actually they have not fancied these glitterati buildings or glitterati architecture. It has not been much of their interest. Many women architects, if you follow them,
Absolutely.
very
Absolutely.
few women
Absolutely.
architects in the world who have become all these masculine buildings and looking at the form
I
first and
agree.
not really looking at the other aspects of the building.
I
So that's
agree.
also
I
very
agree.
feministic and very woman-like. Of course, I mean,
Absolutely.
again, not to limit it to a woman, but more feministic. So that brings me to the last question of the conversation here. I maybe you may like to tell our younger generation, gender no bar, uh, how to make this profession of built environment, which includes architecture, urban design, planning, conservation, and all those, make more a gender, inclusive space. Let there be more neutrality, or let there be no gender discussion or parity at all. What will be your message for that?
Well, Mansi, I think I've interacted with these students and these younger children for the last so many years. And one good shift that I see is that between the kids, these gender aspects are vanishing. They can actually backslap each other without feeling inhibition or anything else. And I think that's a huge victory for women and men both. In terms of architecture, I think there is one thing that my teacher used to tell me, and I think I still believe with it. Architects have to be missionaries. They will have to carry architecture to places, and from becoming elitist, they will have to become architects of the masses. And so that is why when we are kind of preparing our syllabus and we are preparing students for practice, we encourage them to go to smaller towns and go to smaller cities and practice there. So once they bring their own ideology, once the younger generation is also gender inclusive, they do not believe that men and women are different, and they start going and practicing to smaller towns and places, they will bring about that change because they are the carriers of that change. So I don't think they really believe. I remember I was interning in Ahmedabad. This was about 30 years ago, almost 30 years ago. And that's the first time I saw that women were riding motorbikes and men were sitting behind them. In North India, you couldn't imagine that. Now, here again in Lucknow, I see it all the time. The women are driving and the men are sitting pillion, even in the car, be it a motorcycle, be it a scooty. So I think if the younger generation is okay by it, it's a huge feat. It's a huge feat. They are the future. They will have to be inclusive, show that inclusivity, and design for inclusivity. And I think they're pretty good people, pretty good people. I mean, they do plays, they do these nataks, they do these nukkad nataks where they're talking about all issues related to women. I mean, it's a great change. I'm really enthused by what the young generation brings. So
Absolutely, absolutely. We are seeing change in our own lives actually over
yeah,
the
yeah,
years, and it's
absolutely.
also good to see through the eyes of the younger generation. And it has to do with the values imbibed at home as well as the institutions, because even when we were studying, we did not really see that gender parity, at least at the institution level.
Noted.
It only comes out when people go out, because even till date, more than 50% women from architecture, they don't land up anywhere. That is also even current status. So,
Actually.
so at least in one environment where we have little bit of control, or where we can, do something which is academic, is still taking it as gender neutral situation, but we are still far away to really change the
Very correct.
situation in the society, for that matter, especially in the practice side of it. And research, definitely many women are very successfully handling research now, but they have diversified in many fields apart from architecture. In fact, women are the ones who are redefining what is architecture. I mean, going to water for that matter, going and doing all kinds of sustainability issues, and taking up even gender issues for that matter.
Absolutely.
Child, which is not even taught in architecture as a physical being, child in the city and all. So thank you so much for this conversation. I hope you enjoyed it, and I really look forward to doing something together. And thank you so much for your time. Yeah, please take care of yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Mansee. Bye-bye.
Please take care. Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye.